Today we're talking about the forgotten game modes, maps and features removed over the years of Warthunder's development. Unless you've been playing the game since the beginning, you may not have even realised that these things were ever part of Warthunder. Break was a ground forces game mode removed about 4 or 5 years ago, sometime in 2017. The game mode was playable in random battles with regular RP and Silver Lion rewards as other game modes. The game mode though was much rarer than Domination, Battle and Conquest, but it did come up occasionally. It's very tricky to find information on Break because Google returns almost nothing useful for Break, since all the results come up just talking about hull break mechanics or how Warthunder's broken. By using Google Advanced Search, I was able to find some gameplay from Scorpion and Raw Chaos.
Fucking disaster!
Break was all about capturing dynamic objectives. The idea was the game mode was a sort of race between two teams to capture all of their team's objectives, while not allowing the enemy team to do the same. When you captured a point, a new capture zone would open up, and eventually capturing all the zones would lead to your team's victory. Additionally, as zones were captured, extra spawn points became available to nearby newly captured zones, so that respawning players didn't have to drive quite as far to re-engage in the battle. The issue with that was it kind of caused a bit of a spawn camping nightmare, as people completely ignored the objectives as they knew a new spawn point would soon be created, so simply just drove directly there to kill respawning players. I think the concept was good, but the main issue was the size of the maps. Playing Break on jungle didn't really work because of how small the map was, but you do have to remember that this is a pre-folder War Thunder, so the biggest maps in the game were tiny compared to what we have today. If you want to play the game mode today, the closest you're going to get is in Naval, as very similar capture zone mechanics were added to the battle mode for Naval. So if you want to relive Break, perhaps it's time to jump into a PT boat. When it comes to maps, as with every game, maps come and go, and one of the most hated maps in the history of War Thunder was Surroundings of Volcalamsk. In August 2019, Gaijin, in response to widespread frustration with maps, implemented the map rotation filter that allowed premium players to ban one map of their choice. Shortly after the map ban feature was added, Surroundings of Volcalamsk was removed from the ground forces rotation. Presumably Gaijin looked at the data for which maps had been banned and disliked, and a significant portion of the player base had banned Volcalamsk, so they simply got rid of it. You can still play the map today in a custom battle if you'd like to check it out. One reason why I'm talking about this is Surroundings of Volcalamsk was not the only version of Volcalamsk that existed. There was a much smaller version made for low tier ground forces, but with the removal of the big version we lost this actually pretty nice small map. So could we get some hashtag justice for small Volo and have it back in the rotation, please? During the rise in popularity of PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, War Thunder jumped on the Battle Royale trend and added a special game mode to the game. Battle Royale in War Thunder was a little primitive and was mostly just added as a novelty. Unique to this game mode were special pickups. There was a medkit to heal your crew, a repair kit to repair damage and replenish ammunition, extra FPE charges lay around the map, and even super artillery, which destroyed anything within a specific radius but took much longer for the barrage to begin when compared to regular random battle artillery. The initial runs of the game mode had very small Silver Lion rewards and was just for a bit of fun, but more recently in April of 2020, players could unlock premium packs and unique decorations. For 2 wins you got a leather helmet, and for 5 you unlocked a silver helmet with some lovely blue plumage. The gold helmet was much more exclusive and only given out to the top 100 players, and unlike other helmets, came in coupon form. This means it could be sold on the Gaijin market, and due to its rarity, it's now going for $40 despite just being a tiny 3D decoration.
I was a businessman doing business.
Battle Royale was previously also used on the dev server as a game mode for players to grind out new vehicles with the 5x multiplayer that comes with the dev server. But at some point Gaijin just sort of gave up on this idea, and it's back to random battles if you want to unlock anything new. It'll be interesting to see if Battle Royale makes a return to the game, especially now we have a map like Red Desert, which is basically just that one PUBG map anyway. At the beginning of War Thunder, RP didn't exist as we know it today. The current RP rank system was implemented with update 1.37 on December 18th, 2013. I never got to experience this one myself, but the way it worked was each nation had a cumulative RP pool, and researching the required amount of RP made all the vehicles of the next tier available to purchase with Silver Lions. Back then the game didn't even have tanks yet, so the trees were much smaller with way less vehicles. That meant sometimes when you unlocked a new rank, you unlocked just 1 plane, sometimes you unlocked nothing, and other times you'd unlock 6. Again, it's tricky to find reliable sources for information, so take the next bit with a bit of an asterisk. But I believe an interesting quirk of the old system was there was a cap on how much you could earn from one particular plane, and eventually you would earn nothing from each match for simply playing it too much. I believe this was in an attempt to force diversity of gameplay and fill out the matchmaker queue a little bit better. Also, there was a feature where you could tell the matchmaker to give you a random nation to play and you would receive a bonus reward. BR compression is always a contentious topic, so if you were playing back then, I would love to hear your thoughts on what you think the long-term outcome of the switch in economy is, and do try your best to maintain objectivity. Helicopters today have an enduring confrontation game mode, but on our initial release, the helicopters had a dedicated mode similar to how tanks and planes have dedicated modes. The game mode revolved around capping zones and killing ground units, as well as players. What's interesting about the ground units is, unlike ARB tanks that consist of what is essentially a moving engine block, some of the tanks here were fully modelled more similar to ground forces. The game mode used air arcade maps and placed helipads around the maps as capture zones. When I first started playing Warthunder, I never really played all that much air arcade and went straight into RB, so when I see these arcade maps today, I think of them as helicopter maps that no longer exist. The issues of the game mode were the painfully slow grind, and you were pretty much forced to play arcade as the RB non-mixed queue took such a long time to find a match. Similar to Enduring Confrontation today, the PvP element is quite frustrating as it's very difficult to effectively engage in a starter helicopter versus a spaded top tier, leaving you to pretty much just ground pound if you're wanting to unlock stuff for free. I'm not sure why Gaijin decided to move to the Enduring Confrontation format, but personally I much prefer the original heli game mode. In terms of ground pounding, both game modes are essentially fly to objective and left click, but where before you had to manoeuvre your helicopter through tricky mountains of arcade, today there's not much terrain to contend with. There is the city map of course, but it's not quite the same. Game modes and maps aren't the only thing that Gaijin have permanently got rid of. There are vehicles that aren't around anymore and that can only be played if you have previously unlocked them. On 13th of August 2019, Gaijin announced that the Mouse, Coelian, Panther 2 and Tiger 105 would be made no longer obtainable via the regular research tree. The Coelian, Panther and Tiger were removed for historical reasons, as the way that they appeared in the game was ahistorical and the vehicles were implemented during a time when Gaijin had no intention of developing into the modern era. The Mouse of course is historical, and the reason given for the removal was balance reasons, so the Mouse is still obtainable about once a year when the tank is briefly added to the German tech tree. Other removed vehicles include the SB2Ms in the Russian tree and the Italian aircraft like the SM79s and the C202s that were previously in the German tech tree. Gaijin added the spam of bombers so that they could get the world record for the most unique aircraft in a flight sim, but with the introduction of the Italian tech tree they kind of became obsolete and were removed from the game. I don't have all the SM79s, but I am lucky enough to have the C202s in the German tech tree, which makes my account a little bit more interesting. But don't worry, you're not missing out on much if you don't have these planes, because you can simply play them in the Italian tree. Now, what I haven't mentioned is the April Fool's festivities that Gaijin puts on every year that won't ever make a return. You're going to want to click here if you want to find out all about them.